Today is Tisha B'Av, the ninth day in the month of Av. This day marks the um, the day of the greatest tragedies in our history. Um, Most prominent among which is the destruction of our Beis Hamikdash, our holy temple. And then today, when we remember and we mourn, and our sages have a wonderful insight that they share with us. In the story of our patriarch Jacob and his son Joseph, there was the incident where Joseph was sold by his brothers into slavery, and our sages indicate that, generally speaking, there is a rule that after a while, hames nishtakach min halev, that there's a loss and a person dies, eventually the mourners forget that individual. He is nishtakach, he is um, forgotten from the heart. As it happened, the brothers told their father Jacob that Joseph, his beloved son, was killed and that he's gone. Nevertheless, Jacob would not, he would not, he didn't accept it. He wouldn't be consoled. He couldn't, and he wouldn't be consoled, our sages tell us, because Joseph was in fact not dead. He was still very much alive. So he kept hoping that he would at some point meet up with his beloved son. Now, this is relevant for us because though it's thousands of years since we lost our temple, we still haven't stopped, we haven't forgotten. We have not forgotten, which indicates that that which we remember is still very much alive in our hearts. Because if it would be gone, if it would be dead, so to speak, we would no longer mourn. It would be something of the past. However, the fact that we mourn every year on the day of Tisha B'Av is an indication that it's very much uh, real, and it's something that we contend with. So the question is, what was so special about what we lost, and how could we relate to it? One of the ways we can relate is that we look at the human condition, the current human condition. We live in a world that's fraught with angst and with fears, and the time, that period of time that we lived in with our Beis Hamikdash, we were safe. We live in a world where all of our needs come. It's really hard, making a livelihood. There's so much illness, so much sickness. So much tension and so many conflicts, and we live in a violent and immoral world, and it's almost like we can't even sleep peacefully at night. And that was what we have in our world today. And it's so different from what we had at the time in Jerusalem when we had our temple and we lived together as a people. And that's what we yearn for, and that's what we long for. But most essential is the Beis Hamikdash, the holy temple, was a place where the Almighty's presence was palpable. We would go there and we would feel embraced. Our connection to our souls, our connection to our source, our spirituality was recharged, and the direction that we needed to take in our lives in that context became clear and evident. And we felt a sense, in that connection, we felt a sense of true fulfillment. Rabbi Ari Borsek, who gave a talk on Tisha B'Av, related an anecdote of a king who had a son, and the son went off the path that he was supposed to be traveling, and it was a source of great anguish for his father when he realized that he had no choice but to banish his son. He banished him off to a faraway village, and of course he was his heart was broken. On one occasion, after a long period of time, he sent a messenger to his son, telling him that he would grant him a single wish that he would want. And the messenger asked the son, what would he like from his father? And uh, the son thought for a moment and told the messenger, please tell my father that the winters here are very, very cold, and I would like a warm blanket. And he brought that message back to the father, and the father was so heartbroken that here the son could have had any wish fulfilled, and he was hoping that his son would say, you know, Daddy, I miss you so much. I miss our connection. I miss life in the palace. I would like more than anything else if there would be a way that you would let me come home and you would embrace me again. But the son focused on a blanket. So we need to understand that a very important factor, and that is that there are two streams in the universe. The one is God in search of man, and the second is man in search of God. On Tisha B'Av, we read the book of Lamentations, Eicha. And Eicha, the word Eicha, which means how did this happen to us as a nation? How did we get to this place? Is the same word with different vowels of the word Ayeka, where are you? Ayeka, at the beginning of time, when Adam and Eve were created and they were in paradise in Gan Eden, and then they made their fateful mistake, and they realized what they had done, how that disconnected them from the source. They felt ashamed and they hid. And the Almighty came through the garden and he called out, Adam Ayeka, man, where are you? Where are you? And those are the same words for and that we say on Tisha B'Av in the book of Lamentations, Eicha. And what that represents is the Almighty God in search of man. And that call, the call of Ayeka, echoes through all these thousands of years. The Father calling out from the palace, my beloved children, where are you? So what would it take for us to be reinstated? So one of the important insights is that when the Almighty had the temple built and the Mishkan built, the sanctuary, when it was built, the Almighty, the verse tells us that the Almighty said, build me a temple, build me a sanctuary, a Mishkan. B'shochanti b'socham, and I will dwell in its midst. The grammar is such that it doesn't say I will v'shochanti b'socho, I will dwell in its midst, meaning in the sanctuary. It says v'shochanti b'socham, I will dwell in their midst, meaning that the idea, what the Almighty wanted, was not so much an edifice of brick and mortar as much as he wanted to dwell in the midst of every Jew, each and every one of us, because the outer temple, the outer Mishkan, the outer Beis Hamikdash was only a reflection of what was inside of us. You know what's supposed to be inside of us. The temple, the sanctuary that the Almighty wanted us to build, was a sanctuary and a temple within ourselves, an inner temple. And we can understand a little bit of what we should be going through and of our longing is when I don't know if how many of you have been to the Wailing Wall in Jerusalem, the Kotel, the Kosel. And in this Kosel, this Wailing Wall, is only a small vestige of magnificent temple that once existed and that in our midst. And all of us know that when we come there, something happens to us. We look at those stones and we see everybody coming from every walk of life, holding on to those stones, kissing those stones, crying their hearts out. They had a song that went, Yesh Anashim im Lev Shel Even, V'yesh Avonim im Lev Adam. There are people who have hearts of stones, but there are stones that have a heart, a human heart. And that's what it feels like. It's like a connection to the Almighty. And that's only a small vestige of what once was, but it connects us to our hopes and dreams. It touches something very, very deep within each and every one of us, no matter how alienated or far afield we are, and how disconnected we are. And why is that? Because we have this longing. We have a longing for Mashiach. We have a longing for redemption. And we need to know that it's all of us, this Mashiach, the Redeemer that we yearn for, is really something not out there as much as it is an inner redemptive quality that really each and every one of us has within us. And it's important to know that because at this time on Tisha B'Av, it's a time when we have to activate that inner redemption and inner redemptive quality, that inner Mashiach that we all have. Because our sages tell us that every generation in which the Beis HaMikdash, in which the temple is not rebuilt in their day, it's as though it was destroyed in their day. Meaning that if today, if the temple is not rebuilt, and if we are not reinstated into our lives, the lives that we had at that time, it's a sign that it just as if it were destroyed today, because we haven't done the work that would rebuild that temple. And the question is, of course, what was it? How do we figure out what it is that we have to do? So our sages tell us that the temple was destroyed because of sinas chinam, which means baseless hatred. And my husband once explained what baseless hatred means, because it's hard to believe that I would hate somebody else for nothing, that it's baseless. And he explained that the reason that we can hate anybody else, and this is so true in psychological terms, is it's a hatred that comes from chinam, from feeling like I am nothing, that I'm not worth anything. I'm empty inside. There's a bottomless pit inside of me, and I have no energy left to interact with another person in a positive way. So the hatred that I have comes as a result of feeling so empty within ourselves. So the point is, the first thing we need to address, if we want to correct this hatred that we had toward each other, is to look at ourselves and to know that a piece of the Almighty inheres in each and every one of us, and that the Almighty is rooting for us. As a matter of fact, every morning when we wake up, the first little verse we say is Moda Ani, I thank you, God, for giving me back my soul. And we end up by saying, Rabba Amunasecha, great is your faith in me. Right away when we wake up, the Almighty, we say to God, you gave me back my soul today, and I understand that the reason you did that is because you have great faith in my ability to do something positive with my life. So it's our Father is waiting for us to come home. He is calling out, Ayeka, where are you, my children? And it's God in search of man. But there's one caveat here that's very important to remember, and that is the month of that this is in, Tisha B'Av. Av means Father. And when we talk about the Almighty rooting for us individually, the Almighty is our Father, which means that He is not only my Father, but He is a Father to all of His children. And our Kabbalistic works tell us that we are all derived from one soul, that we are really all one entity, all of us together. And we need, when we look at our God and man in search of God, we want to relate to Him, we have to realize that that would entail looking out for our brothers and sisters as well, which means our sages tell us that when the Makkah, the plague of Choshech, of darkness, happened in Egypt, and they describe that plague, and they said the plague of darkness. How do you define darkness? They say darkness is when you cannot see your friend. Darkness is when you cannot see your friend. In contrast to that, what is or? What is light? Light, when the halacha tells us when you can begin to pray in the morning, it talks about when you can say Shema in the morning, it talks about when it's light, when it becomes light. And how do you know when it's light? So again, they say it's when a person can see their friend. So darkness is when we can't see our friend. We're so self-absorbed in ourselves that we can't reach out to others, and we can't love those beyond ourselves. And or light is when we see our friends and we can address their needs as well as our own. So we need to know that the smallest of deeds, this doesn't require an overhaul in our life, and it doesn't require that the whole world do the same. The smallest of deeds of reaching out, of connecting to our essence, of activating that redemptive quality within us, which in ourselves, lights up the heavens, and it starts bringing we can hear the footsteps of Mashiach, of redemption, and it's all dependent on our making it happen. There's a tapestry up there in heaven that's waiting to be finished, and we can bring it all together by liberating our inner Mashiach, our inner potential. So, what does this require of us? The understanding needs to be that love is a transformative quality, which means that if we can extend love, which means at first forgiving others, and perhaps it begins with forgiving ourselves. Because when we're in the mode of chinam, of feeling empty, of feeling like nothing, it's hard for us to forgive anybody else. So, um, letting go of anger, a good word, giving others a good word, a smile, calling somebody who needs a little bit affirmation and validation, whether they deserve it or not. That will counteract the baseless hatred for which the temple was destroyed. Baseless hatred can only be counteracted with baseless love. And just because. I had a call from a mother at one point, and she said to me, I think I've just scarred my life, my child's life forever. I My child did something and I overreacted. I screamed, I yelled, and I'm sure my child will be scarred for life. So I said to her, "Don't worry, honey, relax. Just as you overreacted in a negative way, next time your child walks by you, just grab that child and give him or her a big hug and kiss, and they'll look at you and they'll say, 'What was that for?' And you say, 'Just because I love you.'" So if we overreact in a negative way, we counteract that by overreacting in a positive way. There was a wonderful story told that captures this whole idea of reaching out to others and of giving, that's so essential and so important, especially in this time of Tisha B'Av. The story was of a mother who went to the store before a holiday to outfit her children in advance of the coming event. So she goes into this store with all of her children, 5 children in tow, and she outfits them totally, from shoes, a suit, pants, a jacket, hat, dresses. And as she comes out with the children, and they're all looking so beautiful, donning their best for the holiday. She sees a little boy looking in the window, a little boy in ragged clothing, and he's kind of looking wistfully at her and her children. They look so beautiful, and there's so much. The mother's shining with this love when she looks at her children. And this woman looks at this boy, and she can't stand it. Here, in contrast to her children, who have a mother who has the ability to do all this for them with so much love, there's this poor child outside. So she decides, she takes the child, and she takes him inside the store and outfits him in exactly the same way that she outfitted her children. And when she brings him outside, he looks up at her and he says to her, "Are you God?" And with tears in her eyes, she says to him, "No, I'm not God. I'm just one of his children." And the little boy says to her, I knew you had to be related." And that's when we are most related to the Almighty, when we are most godlike, is when we look to the others in our lives, around all people around us, and we want to give of ourselves. We want to reach out with baseless love to counteract the baseless hatred. And if we do that in a in an individual way, we will activate the collective redemption that we have been looking for so many thousands of years. And our sages tell us that with our doing what we need to do, and again, my doing what I have to do, you doing what you have to do, only by a single deed, not thinking globally that everybody has to do it. I just have to do my share, that we will transform this day of Tisha B'Av, this day of mourning, the day of grieving. We will transform it into a holiday. Instead of sitting on the floor and mourning, that we will be interacting with each other and wishing each other a Freilichen Tisha B'Av, a happy Tisha B'Av. And what this requires is that these two streams in the universe coincide. Ayeka, God calling out to us, God in search of man, will be joined by man in search of God. And the Almighty will, in the very immediate future, hopefully, take us back to his palace, rebuild the Beis HaMikdash, rebuild that connection with us that really, in the deep recesses of our heart and soul, we yearned for. And it's up to each and every one of us.